Hi, this is Dana of Days Crochet, and today I'm going to show you how to make this granny purse, or granny bag as I like to call it. So you can see that the stitches look very similar to a granny square using the 3 double crochet cluster, and I lined this particular bag the way that I show you in another tutorial by crocheting into the zipper. And there are some regrets that I have about doing it this way. This bag is kind of flimsy. Now if you doubled or tripled up your yarn, that would give it a sturdy enough body to where you could line it with a simple cotton fabric. But because it is very flimsy, I do not recommend that anymore. If I could redo it, I would use a canvas bag. And I got this canvas bag from Hobby Lobby for $1.29. It's rather large. It's very sturdy and it's the right color, you know, it goes with a lot. And it's already made. For $1.29, you don't have to do any sewing really. You can just sew the zipper part, like slide this down into the bag and sew it directly to the zipper in the bag. So I will be using this method today because I intend to sell my finished product. If you are interested in lining it the way that I did this one, I will link the tutorial below that I used to describe how I did that. For the strap, you can buy a strap, but for this one I just did a simple slip stitch strap, and I'll show you how to do that. And then of course I had to add a beaded tassel because I'm obsessed with beads. So for today's bag, what I will be using, Comfy Cotton Blend. Now this will be my accent color because everybody knows a really light color for a purse is probably not a good idea. It's going to get dirty. So the main body color that I intend to be using today is the color Chai Latte. It's probably my favorite in the Comfy Cotton Blend. It is kind of annoying to work with, I'll be honest. As you can see right there, it tends to separate and thread. But if you are intentional about the way that you make your stitches, then it shouldn't be that big of a problem. I chose this color because it's real beachy and summery and I love it. I think that yes, you could make it striped like the one I made before, but I think a whole bag in this color with a brim of this color is going to be beautiful. So you'll need that if you're going to make it exactly like mine. You will also of course need scissors. I'm going to use a small hook. Now I'll show you. They recommend a size J 6mm hook. I am not going to be using a bigger hook, and the reason being is these holes here in the bag, they can get kind of large, and I want to prevent that. So what I'm doing is to create a tighter knit bag using a smaller hook than what it recommends. You can use whatever you want, honestly. I'm also going to be using the monofilament illusion cord for my bead tassel, and you're going to need a tape measure and of course a needle and sewing thread. I use the transparent nylon thread because I do not make pretty stitches, so this hides the stitches very well and it still does the job. It's kind of annoying to work with, so if you would rather use regular thread, that's fine. This is what I'm going to be using today. And you will need beads if you're going to make your beaded tassel. Now I have all these beads right here because I wanted to show you the direction that you can go with your bag. You can go beachy, which is what I'm going to be doing today, and I'm just going to use natural wooden beads, and I'll probably make a tassel in either this color or the cream color. I haven't quite decided. Probably this color. Or you can make it kind of dressy, and I think I got these beads in an assortment bag at Walmart for like $1. So as you can see, those colors really match, so if you wanted to dress it up, you totally could. But like I said, I think I'm going to go beachy today. Okay, so we're going to get started on the body of the bag, and the main thing to remember with this particular pattern is you are doing multiples of 3 plus 1. And also, you are going to want to measure your zipper or your bag that you are sliding into the body here, and you are going to want to subtract 2 inches from that length. So for example, if you have a 7-inch zipper, you are going to want to make a chain in multiples of 3 plus 1 that is 5 inches in length. So it doesn't matter what size hook you use or what yarn you use, you just need to remember those 2 things. And the reason that you subtract 2 inches is because this particular pattern grows by 1 inch on each side of the foundation chain. So you don't want it to be huge. You don't want it to swallow the bag that you're sliding in or the zipper that you are using. So for my bag, it is not quite 11 inches across, so it's like 10 3/4 inches. So I'm going to subtract 2 inches, and that is what I'm going to make my foundation chain in length. But I also have to remember to chain in multiples of 3 and add 1 at the end when I reach where I want to get. So there's 1, there's 2. So I need to make my chain to be about 8 3/4 inches to work for this bag. So throw your slip knot on your hook and get to chaining. You don't want to chain too very tightly because you got to work back into it. So let's see where we are here. I've got 36. Oh, I passed it up. So I'm going to take 3 out at a time. 1, 2, 3. Let's see where we are here. We're actually at 9. So that'll have to do. I'll just have to crochet a bit tighter. Okay. So first thing you're going to do is turn your chain to where the bumps are facing up, the little backbone as I like to call it. You're going to skip that first chain and you're going to make a single crochet in the second one from your hook and in each chain stitch across. And you want to make sure that you have a multiple of 3 when you hit the end, because that's very important. So I'm going to stop the film and meet you when I get to the end of this chain. So I've reached the end of my chain. I've placed 1 single crochet in each chain across after skipping the first chain from my hook, and I'm here at the end. Now for this bag you're going to be making the bottom of the bag, and this works in a continuous round. So rather than working in a row, we are going to turn the chain and work on the opposite side of it. So you're going to be working into the V's on the bottom of the chain, and our single crochets will be sharing the same stitch. Okay, we're not chaining 1 or anything, we're just turning and putting 1 single crochet in each chain stitch around. And I'm just single crocheting over the top of that tail. I'll weave it in the rest of the way later. For those of you who are familiar with my puff stitch bag pattern, this is how I work round 1 as well. This is a great foundation round for bags, especially small bags, because you can realistically take any pattern, any stitch pattern that works in the round, and use this as your base or your bottom of your bag. Okay, so I'm putting a single crochet in the last stitch there, and if I were you, I'd turn around and count. Make sure you have an even number of stitches, like the same on each side, and also a stitch multiple of 3, because that's what you need for this pattern to work. And then when you get to the end, you're going to slip stitch into the top of your first single crochet to end that round. So that's round 1. For round 2, you're going to chain 3. That will count as a stitch. And we're going to put 2 double crochet in the same stitch that you chained 3 from. So this counts as 3 double crochets, which is a cluster. So you're going to skip 2 stitches and put 3 double crochet in the next stitch. I'm going to continue to call the 3 double crochets a cluster for ease of the pattern. So you're going to skip 2, make a cluster, skip 2, make a cluster, skip 2, make a cluster in the 3rd stitch, and we're going to repeat this sequence all the way to the corner of this round. The corner is over here. So it's before you turn to work on the other side, we are going to increase on that corner. And I'll explain a little more in detail here in a minute. Okay, so when I skip 2, that's going to bring me to this corner right here. So that the bag does not curl up upon itself, we've got an increase right there. So an increase will be a cluster, a chain 1 space, and another cluster in that same stitch. That will bring us to the other side of the round, and we're going to continue to work our pattern repeat to the end, which is skip 2, make a cluster in the next stitch, skip 2, make a cluster, skip 2, make a cluster, all the way to the end. And when we get to the end of this round, I will show you how to finish it off. Okay, so here I am at the end of round 2. And because we increased at this end by making a cluster, chain 1 space, and a cluster in the same stitch, we need to make this side the same way. So we're going to skip these stitches here, and we're going to make a cluster and a chain 1 space in the same stitch that we did our beginning cluster in. So find that spot, make a cluster, chain 1, and we're going to slip stitch into the top of the beginning chain 3 to finish off round 2. All right, so this is about what it should look like. You'll see it's already starting to bowl up. And from here on out, we are done increasing. So what that means is from round 3 on, we will not be putting extra clusters in a stitch. So keep that in mind. We're going to chain 3, which will count as a stitch, and you're going to pull these the first and last clusters of round 2 apart. You will see a space there. We're going to be making our cluster in that space. So that is the chain 3 and 2 double crochets. Now we're going to skip that cluster and go to the space in between the next 2 clusters. Make a cluster in that space. Now remember, we're not chaining between these clusters. The only time we chained between clusters was when we increased, and we're done increasing. So we're going to skip to the next space between the clusters and make another cluster. Skip to the next space and make a cluster. You are going to be placing one cluster in the space between the clusters in round 2, all the way around. You will not be adding clusters or chaining in between the clusters. You are just going to be placing a cluster in the space between clusters all the way around. You will notice that your rounds, as it starts to make the bag shape, is going to increase the length of your base quite a bit, okay? So if you were worried that it was going to be too short, trust me, it's about to grow. I found that out the hard way. For my puff stitch bag, you add 1 inch to the foundation chain in order for it to work with the zipper. But this bag grows. It does not shrink. So I'm getting to that corner chain 1 space. You're not increasing, you're just going to make 1 cluster in that space and call it a day. That's gonna bring you to the next side of the round. Make your clusters in the space between the clusters in the round below. This is a great project. It's kind of mindless. I like mindless. You can do it while you're watching a TV show or something. Makes it really easy. In a lot of ways, granny squares are mindless except for those corners. I can tell you how many granny squares I've screwed up by not paying attention. Thankfully, this is just the same thing over and over. You only increase in round 2, so that makes it really nice. And as you can see, my base has already grown quite a lot. It's amazing. I'm getting close to the end of round 3. Okay, so here we are. The beginning cluster is already in that hole there, and we're not increasing, so we're just skipping over and slip stitching into the top of the beginning chain 3. We aren't chaining 1, we aren't increasing and anything like that, just slip stitch, okay? That's going to make it start having that nice bag shape. All right, and now's a good time to see if you're doing a canvas bag like I am, you are going to want to see if it's the right size. I've already screwed this up once, so if it's not the right size, I may cry. It's going to stretch a bit, and it's going to grow just a hair more, so I'm not super worried about it. So yeah, that should be just fine. If you're not comfortable with it, you're welcome to start over, but I do want it to be rather snug. So I think that's perfect, and I love the color together. That's going to be just right. So, like I said before, your round 3 on is going to be the same. So you're going to chain 3, which will count as your beginning double crochet of your cluster. Make 2 more in that same space there between the clusters. Skip to the next space, make a cluster, and just continue making clusters in the space between the clusters in the round below. You are going to continue this pattern all the way until you reach the size that you want your bag to be. So for me, let me just stop right here and show you. I'm going to continue rounds until it comes to about right here. I want it to have a bit of a brim, which will be in this color here, and I'm going to put my business tag there And I'm also going to add a beaded tassel, and I will probably add a strap. So I will meet you when I reach the size that I want. I just wanted to show you real quickly the size of the bag after just doing 2 more rounds, since I showed you how to do each round. And as you can see, it fits my bag perfectly. By subtracting 2 inches from my foundation chain length of the zipper, I was able to get it the exact length that I needed. It has a snug fit. So just keep in mind that your bag will grow 1 inch on each side of your foundation chain as you do your rounds. So definitely you want to take off at least 1.5 inches, if not 2 inches. Depends on how tight you crochet, I guess. But you don't want it to be hanging off loose. So just wanted to show you that as I started working more rounds. So I've got my bag about the size that I want it before the brim here. I think I did 17 rounds total for my bag. And I stopped about 1 inch before the top. And here is where I plan to cut my yarn. But before I do, I wanted to point out something that you've probably already noticed. So the corner started back here, and with each round it moved over. So you will be creating one at a diagonal. If I were changing colors, when I went to start the new color, I probably would continue to go to the side so that it would be less obvious. Since I am not really changing color all that much, besides the brim, I won't be showing you that, but you will probably already have an idea if you are making this bag. So where I plan to join my yarn so that it's not as noticeable is on the side. So I'm taking my other color, which is whipped cream, and I'm going to start by joining with a slip stitch over here and doing a single crochet in each double crochet around. Alright, so I found the corner of one side, and it doesn't really matter which side you start from. I'm going to join with a slip stitch, and I'm going to chain 1, and I'm going to put 1 single crochet in each stitch around, all the way around. And you can use a stitch marker in the top and work in continuous rounds if you would like, or you can join with a slip stitch, chain 1, and start a new round. It really doesn't matter. When you put the beginning of your rounds on a corner or a side, it's going to be less noticeable anyways, so it's really up to you. But I'm just putting 1 single crochet in the top of each double crochet around. I'm not going into the space between the clusters like we were before. It wouldn't feel natural to do so in this situation, but I'm just clarifying in case somebody's tempted to do so. You should have the same number of single crochets in this round as you do double crochets in the round below. So I'm just going to continue in the round. I've decided that I want my brim to be at least 1 inch high. So I'm going to continue working in the round until I get that desired measurement. I'm going to then stuff my canvas bag inside and make sure that it all fits. At which point I may decide to add 1 more round of single crochets. It just kind of depends on how well it fits. So I'm going to stop the video and meet you whenever I'm trying to decide if I want to do another round of single crochets. So I decided to do about 6 rounds of single crochet to equal about an inch. Because I used such a small hook, it took me a while to get there. So this is about right for me. I'm not going to do anything else as far as the body of the bag. So I'm going to go ahead and fasten off, and I'm going to take the canvas bag out and weave in my tails. On a lot of my bags, the material, the crochet fabric is so dense that there's no holes. So a lot of times I'll tell you to just leave them loose because nobody's going to see it if you line it. In this particular bag, I do recommend that you weave in your tails because the gaps are quite large. So once I have fastened off, weaved in all my tails, and put the canvas back in, I will get back and show you how I sew the canvas bag to my bag. So I have the canvas bag inside my bag. I've weaved in my tails, and it is ready to be joined to the bag. So you will want to thread a sewing needle with your nylon thread, and you will need to line up the top of your single crochets of your last round with the teeth. And I am going to sew this canvas bag to my crocheted bag, going through the zipper lip here. I'm going to stop and try to line my stitches up with the part where the canvas bag is sewn to the zipper lip. It's going to be challenging. First of all, the canvas material is pretty sturdy, and if you try to go through that and your bag, it can be very challenging. So it's not going to feel natural anyways to go through the canvas. It's not going to hurt it if you go through the canvas, but I'm trying to be consistent. So I did open the bag for ease of sewing. And you can start anywhere really. I will probably start at the opposite end just simply because of the zipper. The zipper pull, I should say. So I'm going to go through the zipper lip in my bag, and I'm going to back stitch like you would on a sewing machine, or if you are an avid sewer, you understand that you need to kind of go backwards a few times to keep it from coming undone later. So that is what I am doing. I'm going around and around basically. Now I'm going to do what's called a back stitch. So my thread is coming out of this stitch here. I'm going to go halfway back, underneath, and come out halfway forward from this stitch. And I'm going to continue going backward, forward, in that motion. This is called a back stitch. It's a sturdier stitch than just your regular sewing stitch. And because this canvas bag is so sturdy, it really makes it actually a lot easier, even though it's not pinned. So I do not have this bag pinned together. I don't really need to. It's doing great. I do not sew large portions together at one time. The main reason that I do that is, number one, I sell my work, and I don't want it to be poor quality. So this bag will probably get a lot of wear and tear if it's used, and I want it to last. So I'm doing it in short sections. Now if you wanted to, you could do it all the way across and then do the other side, but for me, I'm going to do it in smaller sections so that if the zipper starts to come undone in one section, it won't cause the entire thing to be unusable. So as you can see, it's a slow moving process, but it is worth it. It's not any more work than the other method I tell you to do in my other video. In fact, it's a lot less if you think about it. And that other way looks really nice. Don't get me wrong. See here, I'm struggling with the canvas, I think. I need to move my single crochet up just a little bit. See, I'm struggling to get through that material. I think I'm trying to go through the canvas. And I'm just going to take it out and push up my bag seam here. Yeah, that's what it was. So like I said, when you try to go through your canvas, it is not going to feel natural. So you're going to know to go ahead and take it out and push up your seam here. So I'm just lining up my single crochet to the zipper teeth. And you're probably going to want to say a few choice words with this thread. I hate it so much. I have a love-hate relationship with this thread. See, like right now, it's not wanting to do right. Because it's weightless, it's plastic, you know, there it goes. It doesn't have a lot of, you know, form. So it's just going everywhere. It's just going haywire. And I really hate that about it. I think a comparable substitute may be fishing wire. I'm not sure about that. Don't hold me to it. I used a lot of fishing wire for my wedding, and I remember it felt very similar, but it may not be as easy to sew with. I'm not sure about that. But if you've got some laying around and you can't go to the store right now, I'd say give it a try. Or if you're good at hand sewing, you could realistically use, you know, regular thread. But my hand stitching is not the best. Even with as many bags as I have made, it is not the best. So I'm getting kind of short here. I've only got like, I don't know, 3 or 4 inches left. So I'm going to stick it back underneath, and I'm going to do a back stitch and knot it off. I do that several times. And see, I mean, I'm looking straight at it and I cannot see my stitches, like, at all. Even in this kind of light that I've got, I can't see my stitches. So that is the reason that I use it. It's a pain in the tuchus. And so hopefully this will be my last time before I cut it. It just depends on if I can see it. All right. So I'm going to stop the video because I think you have an idea of what I'm doing now. I'm going to finish sewing all the way around till I get back to where I started, lining up the top of my single crochets to the zipper teeth, and that will secure it in place. It'll look lovely, and we'll be ready to embellish it. There will not be a ton of embellishments on this bag because I just don't think it needs it, but I'll meet you back when I've got it sewn on. Okay, so I'm going to show you what I'm going to do for my particular bag. Again, this is just purely what I'm doing. You don't have to do the same thing. So I'm going to cut a length of monofilament cord. I don't know, it's just, I'm eyeballing it. And I'm going to get my yarn needle out because I'm going to use it. And what I plan to do is attach this wooden bead, or excuse me, this wooden ring with the monofilament cording on the side here. So probably through the very, very top, I'm going to, let me go this way. Make a knot with it. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're gonna try our best to actually cover this up. So I'm making a knot, several actually, to make it sturdier. And then I'm going to take this wooden ring and put it inside and make some more knots. So I'm going to take it back and forth to make knots, and then I'm going to probably whip stitch as well. I really want this to be sturdy, and that way, you know, it's not going anywhere if it gets a lot of wear and tear. You can also use O-rings or actual purse rings. I guess I just like being difficult. Not really. And so now I'm going to take it a little deeper. I don't want it to put a lot of stress on one stitch. So I'm going to take both strands and thread it through my needle, and then I'm going to go down a little bit deeper, and I'm going to start whip stitching it to the bag. I'm going out the same stitch every time. It's going to be a little challenging if your ends aren't the same length, so I might as well make them the same length. And then of course you want to leave yourself enough tail to tie into a knot and hide. Alright, so I'll probably go through, if I'm able, some of these strands. And then through it again with at least one of them. I might pull one of them out so that I have a little barrier between them to make a knot. There we go. It's quite challenging. Alright, so now I'm going to tie more knots. You could also use the leather strips that I tell you to get in other of my tutorials. In fact, that's usually what I use. Okay. And then I'm going to take the cream yarn and actually cover that up so it can't be seen. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Okay, so I've cut off a strand of the cream color yarn here. I don't know, 2 feet maybe. It doesn't really matter, just as long as you have enough to whip stitch here. So I'm going to come again through the top there, and come around, and I'm just going to continue to do that until I have that pretty well covered up. I'm going in and out at in the same stitches, the same area. So it's not crooked. Okay, that's pretty well got it covered up. So I'm going to go through the whip stitches I just did. I'm probably back in the way that I was going there to kind of bring them together, and then I'm going to knot it off. Now this should be, if you're doing it the same way as me, on the inside of your bag a bit, way kind of down deep in the corner there. So I went through the top, and I'm going to knot it several times. If you have fabric glue, I would even use that to knot it off. Like, put a dab of glue and then knot one more time. And then I would hide your end here down into the bag. It's tough to weave in an end from the front. It's not my preference, but it's okay. I do recommend putting the O-rings on after you've lined it, because sometimes when you line something like this, it shifts the bag. That's also why I wait to put my business tags on until I've got the lining in, because sometimes when you line the bag, it shifts everything. So it's just better to have it in place for sure than to fool around with it and maybe have to take out your lining or something you've already done. It's not a pleasant experience. Okay, so I've got that. Be careful cutting your your tails in. I've got this side on, and you see that looks really nice, I think. And I'm going to repeat the same thing on the opposite side. And I'm not going to show you because I don't need to show you twice, I don't think. You can rewind the video if you need to. But I'm going to do literally the same exact thing on the other side, and then I will meet back here. So I've got both of my wooden O-rings attached to the bag right here on each side. And I'm about to start adding the strap. I will say that my method, it creates a pretty sturdy fabric, but this material is so thin and flimsy, I've decided to double up my strands and use a bigger hook. So this is a J hook, a 6mm hook, and I've got both of these colors held together for this. Also, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, I believe, you could also crochet holding a strand of fishing line with the fabric, with the yarn, and whenever you are crocheting with that, it makes it much sturdier and it makes it last a lot longer. So I don't have any today, so I won't be using it. So basically what I do is I start on the outside of the ring and I just slip stitch right into it. It's a little challenging with this yarn. Okay, and then I just start chaining all the way across to the other side. I am not crocheting tightly and I'm not counting my stitches. I am just going by what I feel. If I were you, I would do a little bit of research before you chose your shoulder strap. or your strap length, however you want to call it, and see that average size. If you have a favorite purse, I would check the size of it. If you wish to carry it a certain way, I would get your tape measure out and measure that way, just to be sure that you get it. You could also realistically take a piece of yarn and drape it across your body to the comfortable size and then just cut it and use that as a makeshift measuring tape. So I'm just chaining and I'm trying my best to not move much. Like, now is not the time to get up and go to the bathroom. You want to keep your chain going in the same direction as much as possible. It's kind of important. I mean, it's not drastic, but it will make a difference in the way that your bag strap hangs. And if you twist your chain, it's going to twist oddly on your O-rings. So take it from my personal experience, you want to try to keep it as straight as possible. Another thing to remember is what else you could do is, if your strap turns out to be too long, that may actually be a blessing, because then you can turn around and knot the top of it to the length that you want, and that adds a little bit of flair to it, I guess, and you can adjust it by moving the knot. So it just depends on your preference and how much yarn you have. So what I'm going to do now is slip stitch into the other O-ring from the same direction that I did the other one. Okay, pull it kind of tight. Now we're going to chain one and turn. This is why it was important not to turn your chain. And I like to work in the side. Usually when I'm working into a chain, I work into the backbone, but not in this situation. So it's very difficult to get your hook in that first one, but just try, okay? And you're going to loosely slip stitch all the way across. Now also you'll need to remember that when you slip stitch a chain, it decreases its length. It draws it in. So if you are wanting to be specific, like if you really want it to be a certain length, I recommend measuring the length of it after you've done one row of slip stitch all the way across, just to make sure that it's still, you know, what you want. And when I was messing around with the bag a minute ago, I realized this zipper is too close to this O-ring for a tassel. So we are not going to put a beaded tassel on the zipper, but I have some other ideas of what I want to do. So this is going to take forever and ever. So I will pause the video and turn it back on when I get to the end of this row and show you what to do next. Okay, so I will see you at the end of this first slip stitch row. I zoomed in the camera just a little bit so you could really see what I'm doing. Okay, so I'm almost to the other side of the first row of slip stitches. I've got 2 more stitches left, so I'm going to slip stitch into those. And then I'm back to the O-ring, and of course this is not going to be strong enough by itself, so I'm going to slip stitch into the O-ring. And I'm going to chain 1 and turn. You want to turn kind of the same way every time, okay? Flip your strap to where you're working on the same direct, like we are working this direction with the width, okay? So flip it to the wrong side, I guess, and we're going to slip stitch into the first one on the outside there. just slip stitch where you feel the most comfortable. And this is exactly why I told you to slip stitch loosely, because we are going to be slip stitching a lot. The bigger the purse, the wider the strap, realistically, for comfort. I found that out the hard way as well. You want your strap to be fairly comfortable. Ugh, here we go. I've got to go through 2 strands somewhere here. There we go. So keep working along the strap here. Which, as you can see, is challenging because I have, number 1, thready yarn, and number 2, 2 strands to go through instead of just 1, so it's a bit of a challenge. So I'm not going to make you watch me do every single slip stitch, obviously. You're going to continue down the strap, slip stitch into the O-ring on the other side, chain 1 and turn, always increasing the width on the same side of the strap. So don't crisscross, because if you do that, that's going to cause your strap to crisscross and your O-rings will be all wonky, okay? So I'm going to make mine probably at least, I don't know, probably at least that thick, because I want it to be comfortable for whoever wears it. Okay, and then once I get it to the width that I want, I don't pay attention really to how many rows I'm doing because it's impossible to count them anyways. So once I get it to the width that I want, I'm going to fasten off, and then I'm going to show you some ideas that I have for embellishing your bag. Normally, I would put a beaded tassel on the zipper and call it a day. But I don't think that that's going to work for this bag because of this giant O-ring right here, and it would just get in the way. I know I'm going to put my business tag in the center here to make it look more professional, but I do have some ideas for embellishing this bag that I think will be really cute. So I'll be back when I'm done with my strap. Alright, so I have got my bag pretty well done. I've got the strap done. All I have left is the embellishments. And I usually, like I said, like to put a beaded tassel on the zipper. But because of this O-ring, I think it would be cumbersome. So rather than do that and take away from the bag, I have decided to either put a tassel, a beaded tassel in the center, or I could put a beaded tassel on each side. I will most likely do the one in the center. And if you have the assortment bag from Amazon, or if you have a bag of the O-rings, what you could do is a variation. You could attach the O-ring at the top and then let the beaded tassel come down here to just give it a little extra oomph. Or if you don't have the O-ring, but you do have the wooden beads or whatever, if I didn't use the O-ring, I would probably go up a size in the beads to give it a little more character and to balance out the bag, because the bag is so big. So if you don't have something fairly big to center it with, it may seem off, it may seem too small. So what I will probably do is take away the big one, use the O-ring, and then the 2 somewhat smaller beads. And my tassel's going to be rather large. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to use just 1 or 2 beads, but I think I've pretty well decided to use the O-ring. So for the O-ring, I'm going to do like I did on the other 2, and I am going to use just a little bit of monofilament cording. And this is clear and it's very, very sturdy, so that is the main reason that I use it. I am going to thread it onto a yarn needle just to make it a little easier. And instead of going through these double crochets here, because those are kind of flimsy stitches, I'm going to go into this right here, which is the single crochets of the brim. And I'm going to tie a gentle knot, and I say gentle because this is going to draw those stitches together and you don't really want them to pucker. So without warping it, you want to tie a knot. And I'm going to tie another one so it doesn't come undone. That one can be just a little tighter. Alright, now I'm going to tie the O-ring on like I did the other O-rings. And this will be a challenge keeping it straight for me. I've never done this before on this, I've never done this style of bag before as far as what I'm about to do, so I'm not sure if this is going to be the best way because I haven't given it a ton of thought. Usually when I design a bag, I just go with it, and it can be a process. So I am in a double knot here. I'm just basically looping it around and around. I'm going to cover this up with yarn just like I did before. So I'm going underneath it now to tie a knot. I drew one through it and now I'm going kind of behind it, just trying to secure it. And I'm double knotting it. All right. Now we are going to secure it even more with some yarn. Let me tug on that just a hair. I don't want it to go wonky, which the weight of the tassel should help because like I said, I'm going to make it kind of big to kind of balance out the bag because the bag is so large. I'm going to make the tassel larger than I normally would anyways for a beaded tassel, and that is just to balance out the bag because the bag is so big. So I'm whip stitching it right now. You have to be patient with this. It's a pain. I use monofilament cord and clear nylon thread for everything because my stitches are just not the best. Alright, so I'm probably going to take that back through actually, and I'm going to go underneath and through the loops that I just created. Actually, I'm going to do one more because I feel like it's a little loose. So I'm going to bring it to the back. There we go, yeah, that's better. And I'm going to go through the loops that I created onto the thing. I'm trying to pull it tight and I pulled it out. Alright, now I'm going to start, see, I'll knot it one time and then I'm going to take one strand through the loops on the other side and we're going to knot it again. Maybe I'll double knot here. But like I said, monofilament cord really is sturdy and it's not going to come undone very easily. And it's clear, so it leaves a lot nicer of a finish, which is nice. So that time I just went through the stitch because I can't get it through anymore. I'm making the monofilament cord so tight that it won't go through it. Okay, so now I'm just going to cut it nearly to the quick, not quite. And I'm going to take the cream yarn and cover that up. So let's see, I'm going to go from bottom, I think, to top, because I'm going to eventually tie it under there, and I'm wanting that to be the side that's well hidden. as far as the knot goes. There's probably an easier way than what I'm doing. Please don't judge me. I'm really just making this up as I go. I normally do not record my designing process because it's so painful to watch. I guess I'm a bit embarrassed of it, in other words. I go through so many different things before I decide on one that I don't know. All right. Now that looks pretty nice to me. So I'm going to go through it one last time to bring it to the bottom because that's where the ugly side wants to be. I am going to put my needle through those loops that I just created with my whip stitching. Just kind of bring them together. I'm going to do it one more time just for good measure. Okay. And then I'm going to take the other end that I started with, or the tail I should say, and knot it off. Okay, and then I'm going to, if you would like, if you have fabric glue, you could, before that last knot, put a little dab on there and knot it on top of the glue to keep it from, you know, going anywhere. But now I'm going to weave my tail into the brim stitches. Okay, so I have the O-ring where I want it in the center here. And now I am going to take the monofilament cord one more time. And this is how I make all my beaded tassels anymore because it's easier. I take a strand about, oh, I don't know, 10 or 12 inches long. Maybe not quite. And I tie it around the object that it's going to be hanging from. So like the zipper pull usually. And I double or triple knot it. And now I'm going to thread my beads on it. The reason I don't use yarn or anything else is because it's just so much easier with this monofilament cord to just slide your beads on. Even little beads it fits through, which is really nice. Okay, that looks really nice. Before I decide on how many beads though, I'm going to make my tassel. Now, for my tassel, I'm going to be making it rather thick in comparison to what I usually do. If I had been prepared, I would use a cardboard probably for this, since it's not going to be a small tassel. But I don't have it ready, so I'm going to use my hand. And I'd say that's a pretty decent sized tassel right there. So I'm going to wrap my fingers, try to do it evenly a bunch of times. This yarn is thin, and so if you want a thick tassel, you are really going to have to work for it if you're using the same yarn as me. And I'm not counting. Sorry about that, perfectionists. I'm just going till I feel like it's thick enough. I feel like a lot of people where they mess up in crochet is they don't have fun with it. They don't just go with the flow. Like, now granted, I've messed up some projects that way, but for the most part, it makes it so much more fun and enjoyable when you just roll with it. Okay, let's see. That's probably good. So I'm going to cut the bottom all the way through. You need really sharp scissors for this. All right, now Yeah. Find your center and then spread open your monofilament cord and lay your tassel ends or your tassel strands in there and try to place them halfway there. And now we are going to tie a lot of times. You don't want it to go anywhere. Okay. And then I'm going to cut it about an inch down probably. All right. Now, this is cotton. It's a cotton blend, so you could realistically comb it if you wanted to. I don't think I want to. So, in fact, I'm probably going to join them together right there with a couple pieces. I'm probably going to double up my strand here for durability purposes. So I'm going to wrap it around, let's see, one time. And then flip it over and tie it in a knot. And then when you go to cut it, you'll cut all the ends the same length. And I want it to be fairly long, so I'm going to try to salvage these ends here. Oh no. About couldn't do it. And of course I will trim that a little bit better. But your tassel is complete. And I really like the way this bag turned out. So I'll probably play around with it just a little bit more just to make sure I like how it looks. I'll probably hang it up on a wall and take a look at it and make sure that I like it, but I think I do. Okay. And for curious minds, if you are wanting to know what I used for the demo bag, these colors here, I am not sure, honestly, what they are, but I do know that I bought the yarn from Walmart, and I am almost 100% sure that it was Red Heart Super Saver. So, all these colors here are, if I'm not mistaken, Red Heart yarn, and you should be able to find those colors. I'm so sorry that I don't know what they are. I made this over a year ago, and I no longer have the yarn sleeves, so I don't remember the color names. But I can do some digging. If you really, really want to know, leave me a message in the comments saying that you really want to know what the colors are, and I'll do my best to find out what they are, but I don't remember what they are. And I will also link my tag maker below, because a lot of people ask me where I get my tags. But I hope that you enjoyed the granny bag, and honestly, I think this bag looks anything but granny. I think it looks very beachy and fun, and would be a really cute accessory for a summer wardrobe. So I'd love to see your bags. Make sure you follow me on Instagram. If you don't already, it's at Days Crochet and See. And if you're not already a part of my Facebook group, Crochet for Days, please join. We have a lot of fun in our crochet group, and I try to come out with something new all the time to keep it fun, especially during quarantine. So just be sure to like and subscribe, and If you have any requests for tutorials, please let me know and I'll do my best.